Tonight, an 8-year-old missing girl survives a suspected animal attack.
The doctor did use the word miracle. She did say that it was a miracle that she was alive.
A community's fear for one of their little ones turns to relief. Questions about the impact of U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities.
Iran could restart the program almost immediately.
An unhappy Donald Trump fires back.
It's blown up. The kingdom come.
And on the day Canada agrees to ramp up defense spending, a check-in with the country's top soldier.
My sense is that we are getting a lot of support from Canadians.
Chief of Defense Staff General Jennie Carignan.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrian Arsenault.
Thanks for joining us. Residents of a small Ontario community are balancing relief and worry tonight, relieved that a little girl gone missing seems to be recovering in hospital, worried that the animal suspected of causing her grievous injury might still be in nearby woods. Now, officials aren't revealing what kind of animal it was, if they know, but they've warned parents to keep their children supervised or indoors while they work to piece together what happened. Quaidville is a small village in eastern Ontario, about 170 kilometers west of Ottawa. It's a tight-knit rural community with thick wooded areas. Nicole Williams is in the community with what we know about how the young girl ended up in hospital and how her recovery is being described.
Police and wildlife officers searched the woods in Quaidville, Ontario, a small village about 2 hours west of Ottawa. The forest here is dense, but inside is something they suspect is behind a vicious attack on an 8-year-old girl.
People are, they're frightened.
On Monday, the girl had been out playing with her friends, but then went missing in the afternoon. Her disappearance prompted a community search in the area where she was last seen. Ontario Provincial Police got involved, and several hours later, shortly after midnight Tuesday, search dogs found her in the forest. She was alive, but seriously hurt.
We're not releasing the specific details of the injuries. They were very traumatic. In the initial stages, they did appear to be life-threatening injuries.
OPP suspected an animal attack and quickly warned the community to keep a close eye on small children or keep them inside.
It's alarming, but it's understandable. Anything can happen. If a young girl, young boy goes walking and they don't know where they're going and they get mixed up.
The little girl was brought first to a nearby hospital, then airlifted to the Children's Hospital in Ottawa. The family's pastor was with them there while she underwent surgery.
I think it's important for people to know that the doctor did use the word miracle. She did say that it was a miracle that she was alive.
Police say they are asking for any witnesses or surveillance video. There will be DNA testing to determine if an animal was behind the attack, and if so, what kind. With so many unanswered questions, people here remain on edge but are also so relieved their little neighbor was found. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Quaidville, Ontario.
In a social media post tonight, Donald Trump suggested that the U.S. airstrikes on Iran's nuclear sites saved Israel. And as Katie Simpson explains, this came after a day of swaggering claims of success at the NATO summit, as questions linger about what exactly the strikes accomplished on the ground.
Thank you very much. This has been an honor.
U.S. President Donald Trump closed the NATO summit with a victory lap, praising his own intervention in the war between Iran and Israel, comparing it to American efforts to end the Second World War.
If you look at Hiroshima, if you look at Nagasaki, that ended a war too. This ended a war in a different way, but it was so devastating.
But make no mistake, Trump is on the defensive, angered by leaked U.S. intelligence reports suggesting his airstrikes did not destroy Iran's nuclear weapons program, rather setting it back temporarily.
The estimates that I'm seeing are anywhere between 1 or 2 months or a year. Iran could restart the program almost immediately. There's a sense in which it hasn't stopped. There are many, many facilities that just simply were not struck.
Tehran may have also moved its stockpile of enriched uranium before the American strikes, according to inspectors now pleading for access.
So for that to confirm, for the whole situation to evaluate, we need to return.
Trump remains defiant, using his strongest language yet, insisting he's right.
Well, we blew it up. It's blown up to kingdom come. And it was very, very successful. It was called obliteration. Somebody said in a certain way, that it was so devastating, actually.
Trump's CIA director even put out a statement saying there's credible intelligence Iran's program is severely damaged and key sites would need to be rebuilt over the course of years.
Yes, we're going to join.
Among allies, Trump is finding support, some more than happy to reinforce his perspective.
Like two kids in a schoolyard, they fight like hell. You can't stop them. Let them fight for about 2-3 minutes. Then it's easier to stop them.
And then Daddy has to sometimes use strong language.
You have to use strong language. Every once in a while, you have to use a certain word.
Talks have been scheduled for next week between the U.S. and Iran. And while Trump says his goal is to prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapon, he went back and forth over whether an actual deal is necessary to make that happen.
And Katie, it looks like we're supposed to get more details about the U.S. strikes on Iran early Thursday.
Yeah, the Secretary of Defense will hold a news conference with the president promising it will be interesting and irrefutable. Trump has argued questions about the operation are unpatriotic, and he's framing this news conference as a chance to, quote, fight for the dignity of the American pilots involved.
All right, Katie Simpson in Washington. Well, the ceasefire with Iran holds. Death and suffering for both Israelis and Palestinians continues in Gaza, with more deaths reported near aid distribution points. The aid points, says this man, are death points. Out of the nearly 80 people local health officials say were killed over the past day, many were trying to get food. Israel says it fires warning shots at people acting suspiciously. For Israel, it was one of the deadliest days of the war, with 7 soldiers killed in a militant attack. The first Canadian evacuation flight out of the Middle East, carrying 95 passengers, left Jordan for Athens, Greece yesterday. From there, consular staff helped them book commercial travel back to Canada. Well, Canada and its NATO allies have agreed to a radical increase in defense spending. The new target 5% of GDP by 2035. As Kate McKenna shows us, the Prime Minister gave Canadians an idea of when they might feel the financial pinch.
It could be the most consequential NATO meeting in decades, with allies agreeing to boost defense spending to levels not seen since the Second World War.
NATO leaders agreed on the The Hague Defense Investment Plan. And this will fuel a quantum leap in our collective defense.
The new 5% of GDP target was a demand of U.S. President Donald Trump, long accusing allies of not pulling their weight.
NATO is going to become very strong with us. It's a great victory for everybody, I think.
Countries have a 10-year deadline to hit 5%.
The deterrence element of NATO has just gone up substantially, and it's crucial. And we would really feel it if we went in the other direction.
Canada only agreed to meet the previous benchmark of 2% this month, but now it's agreed to 5%, saying it'll hit the target through funding new equipment, infrastructure, and technology.
We must ensure that NATO remains strong, unified, and ready to confront the threats not just of today, but of tomorrow.
The 5% is broken into 2 buckets, 1.5% of GDP on infrastructure funding and 3.5% on core military needs.
Canada has already beginning working towards a target of 3.5% of GDP by 2035.
It's a big spend. The full 5% represents about $150 billion per year, more than double what's paid now. Mark Carney says the new spending is backloaded and Canadians could feel a pinch down the road.
We will have to make considerations about what less the federal government can do in certain cases. Those trade-offs happen towards the end of the decade into the next decade.
This new defense spending target will be reviewed by allies in 2029 to make sure the plan is still working. That also happens to be the year Donald Trump leaves office. Kate McKenna, CBC News, The Hague.
On the sidelines of the conference, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy made a surprise style swap, meeting U.S. President Donald Trump in a black suit. He ditched his usual military attire, for which he came under fire during their tense February meeting. Zelenskyy continues to seek more U.S. support for Ukraine's war with Russia. In northeastern Saskatchewan, residents are returning home weeks after wildfires forced them out. One small community is grappling with more than 200 homes lost. Alexander Kwan shows us the bittersweet return to Denair Beach.
Fresh flowers greet the returning residents of Denair Beach, Saskatchewan. Nearly a month ago, they were forced out under the threat of a looming wildfire that did more than just loom. Many are now left to sift through charred ruins.
Yeah, it was pretty devastating.
Rhonda Rubicki has lived here for 26 years. It's where her husband proposed and where they raised their children. Now, it's all gone.
We didn't leave with anything. And that's a story you'll hear from everybody here. Nobody thought the fire was coming this way. So I think a lot of people they left with nothing.
Rubicki is just one of many residents who've returned now that an evacuation order was partially lifted Wednesday. Denair Beach is a northern village located near the Saskatchewan-Manitoba border.
I know everybody in here.
Volunteer firefighter Rod Burr did everything he could to protect homes until the last minute. He says the tight-knit community of 700 people is hurting.
They put everything into what they had and everything is gone, and they come here to look at that. I feel sad for them.
More than 200 homes were destroyed by the fire. Another volunteer firefighter says the local department wasn't equipped to handle it.
It's bad and it's sad, but there's nothing else that can happen when a wildfire that size reaches a community. This is the result. This is the aftermath of when we let things like this happen.
Even in the destruction, there are moments of joy. For Rubicki, it's a small, ornamental lighthouse.
We got it as a wedding present, and it's still there. So I loved that. That just warms my heart. So that will be in our new home for sure. And same with some of the rock that's left. We are going to try to save it and put it in our new home.
Many residents are now trying to find what they can save from the rubble, preparing to rebuild whenever that may be. Alexander Kwan, CBC News, Regina.
Up the road in Flin Flon, Manitoba, residents anxiously lined up early this morning to return home after being evacuated due to the wildfire.
Got to get back and see what's there to satisfy my mind, I guess. See where we're going to start.
4,800 people were forced out nearly a month ago. Luckily, most homes and structures were not damaged. The fast-moving wildfire that threatened the community is still burning out of control. Well, we are getting a clearer picture tonight of the country's rental market. Statistics Canada has tracked asking rent since 2019, confirming what many already know. Big cities are pricey. But as Nisha Patel shows us, there have been some recent dips.
Vancouver is Canada's most expensive city for renters. The average asking price of a two-bedroom apartment, more than $3,100 a month, ahead of second place Toronto. Yet in both cities, rents are actually down from a year ago.
I currently am getting a deal and I'm never going to leave.
I think there's less demand.
For the first time, StatsCan has tracked asking rents to get a better picture of the current market. In Vancouver and Calgary, the average rent for a two-bedroom apartment dropped 8% in the first 3 months of this year compared to the same time a year ago. Toronto and Halifax saw a 6% drop.
We are seeing rent declines through a combination of increased rental supply. New rental stock has come onto the market over the last few years, coupled with the decrease in population growth. So you're seeing increased supply, reduced demand.
Far fewer international students are coming to Canada. Landlords scrambling to fill vacant units are turning to tactics like move-in bonuses. So renters may find now is a good time to shop around.
There's so many rental incentives right now, including, 1 to 2 months of free rent, or there's some housing providers giving, $500 gift cards.
But even with the recent cool down, rents are still steep compared to pre-pandemic levels. In Montreal, rent for a 2-bedroom apartment is nearly 71% higher than in 2019.
It is a big chunk of my salary, and because it's a big chunk of salary, your mind is always there that what if the rent increased, what would I do?
It's getting ridiculous at this point because at some point people will not be available to afford it.
Over the past few years, governments have introduced measures to boost rental housing construction. Experts say with greater supply, rents could continue to fall. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
A new COVID variant is making the rounds this summer, but new data shows vaccines still offer strong protection against serious illness. Christine Birak looks at the findings.
Still wondering if the COVID shot is worth it? It may not shield you from infection, but it could keep you out of hospital.
This study reinforces that updated COVID-19 vaccines reduce severe disease. That's really important.
A newly published study finds the latest COVID-19 vaccines offered significant protection for about 2 months. Those who got the shot lowered their risk of becoming critically ill by nearly 70% and cut their chances of hospitalization and emergency department visits roughly in half. Protection did wane over time, dropping to about 50% for critical illness, but remained effective up to a year.
If you sold me something that said, you have a 50% chance of not having something bad, I would take that in a heartbeat.
It doesn't happen to you until it happens to you, and at that stage, it's too late.
The latest Canadian data show since August of last year, nearly 32,000 Canadians have been hospitalized with COVID-19, and over 2,000 deaths were reported, mostly in people over 65. That's more than triple the number of flu deaths.
It's going to continue to evolve the way that flu does and, try and sort of outwit and outrun our immune system.
A new variant has been surging in China, India, and the U.S. Nicknamed Nimbus, symptoms can include a severe sore throat. The World Health Organization is tracking it. So far, the severity appears similar to other variants. Family doctors say they're seeing plenty of patients sick with viral illnesses.
A lot of the COVID questions I'm getting around this time of year are actually around vaccines.
Canada's Vaccine Advisory Panel says anyone over 6 months can get a COVID-19 vaccine. It recommends those at higher risk, especially people over 65, should get a shot this fall. It could be the difference between a tough week at home and a trip to the ER. Christine Birak, CBC News, Toronto.
On the anniversary of deadly demonstrations last year, protests erupted across Kenya today against police brutality and extrajudicial killings.
We are losing people every day. It is becoming a massacre in Kenya.
Today is a day for us youths, revolution.
Revolution is coming to Kenya, and I pray that this is a day that will change everything.
As you can see, protesters were met with tear gas, batons, water cannons, and according to hospitals, in some cases, live ammunition. Human rights organizations say at least 16 people have been killed. Well, cougars are suddenly showing up at some BC trails, prompting urgent calls for caution.
Get out of here, big guy.
What's behind the rise in close encounters? India's space program takes a giant leap forward.
2, 1. A new chapter in space takes flight.
How this mission is helping to inspire a generation. And a graduation ceremony gets a burst of energy. We're back in 2 minutes. Okay, that's not good. This American Airlines plane was clearly having issues, spewing sparks and smoke before turning around shortly after takeoff. The crew reported engine trouble, leaving Las Vegas bound for North Carolina. Officials say no one was injured. The cause is under investigation. More people on British Columbia's south coast are reporting close encounters with wildlife. Cougar sightings are on the rise in popular destination communities like Whistler. And as Georgie Smythe shows us, the normally evasive animals aren't always being shy with hikers and tourists.
Get out of here, big guy.
These once chance encounters are increasing in BC's coast mountains. Cougars are getting too close to hikers and bikers. Despite their elusive reputation, it's left those in charge with no choice but to evacuate some campgrounds and temporarily shut down trails in the Sea to Sky region north of Vancouver. Parts of Whistler and Blackcomb Mountains have been closed this week as conservation officers track the Cougars' movement north through the resort.
We had wanted to do one of the tours, and it's been canceled because of cougar activity.
Big predators like grizzlies and black bears and their babies are common on these hillsides, which are also filled with mountain bikers and walkers in the summer. But reports of two roaming and curious cougars has the resort working closely with the BC Conservation Office to find them.
It's just hard to keep track of. Where is it now?
Questions that speak to the wonder and thrill of encountering such a predator, which rarely attack people.
Catches people off guard when there is a confirmed sighting of something as beautiful as a cougar.
There are some theories as to why the cougars are being seen so much, including possible displacement from a recent wildfire in Squamish. There might be a simpler reason, say experts.
So they're sub-adult cougars that are trying to establish a new territory for themselves, and they haven't quite figured out what's food and what's not. They're curious.
For visitors, it's exactly the kind of animal experience people hope for when they visit Whistler.
De la montaña Whistler, la montaña Blackcomb. Just keep your distance and respect.
Even if they have to settle for wildlife a lot more tame than cougars.
I appreciate that they're here. I think it adds to the place.
Conservation officers say they're still trying to locate the cougars, but right now it seems they've disappeared again. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Whistler, BC.
For the first time in more than 4 decades, an Indian national is now in space.
It's a huge responsibility for me to, inspire an entire young generation through my mission.
The reaction on the ground as India's space ambitions take off. Plus, Canada's priorities ahead of a huge boost to defense spending.
We are acquiring air defense system as we speak.
One-on-one with the general in charge. And ticks are on the move, posing a new threat in areas that once were spared.
One well-fed female can lay up to 3,000 eggs.
How to ensure you are ready. The National breaks down the story shaping our world. Next.
I will be your Democratic nominee for the mayor of New York City.
New York State lawmaker and Democratic socialist Zohran Mamdani declared victory in New York City Democratic mayoral primary. Former state governor Andrew Cuomo conceded to the 33-year-old, though it could be days before the final count is known. If confirmed, Mamdani will be on the November 4th ballot for mayor. Well, at this moment, the Axiom 4 mission is steadily approaching the International Space Station and at the pilot's controls, the first Indian in space in more than 40 years. From Mumbai, Salima Shivji shows us he is carrying his country's hopes and dreams with him.
2, 1, ignition.
A long-anticipated launch.
A new chapter in space takes flight.
On board, astronaut Shubhanshu Shukla, the first Indian to go to space in 41 years. It took months of meticulous training to get to this day.
Now take a breath and hold.
The magnitude of the mission hit Shukla in flashes, he says. Little moments like when he first donned his suit.
When I wore that spacesuit and I saw that Indian flag on my shoulder, you take a pause at that time and you think about this, that how big this is. I understand that it's a huge responsibility for me to, inspire an entire young generation through my mission.
Inspire and motivate. Words used often as India talks up its space accomplishments.
Liftoff normal, P1 tracking.
The Chandrayaan-3 mission nearly 2 years ago was a big success. India's rover landing by the moon's south pole, a world first. And the Prime Minister says there's more in store.
India's space journey is not about racing others. It is about reaching higher together.
The plan is to have India's own space station orbiting Earth in 10 years' time, and an Indian astronaut walking on the moon by 2040. Lofty goals that come with challenges.
Even though India is one of 5 major space players, its share of the market is only 2%.
But India is punching far above its weight for a fraction of the price of other space programs. It's more than inspiring for these kids launching their own mini rockets. They're learning about how far into space their country wants to go and crafting their own dreams.
Do you want to go into space one day?
No.
No?
I want to make rockets. I don't want to be an astronaut.
No, look at this, look at this.
That's precisely what the session's organizer wants to hear.
When we talk to the students, we tell them there are only 10 astronauts who go into the space. There are 10,000 minds or hands working to make that thing happen. Very nice.
India has plenty of that, and a young generation motivated to see India's colors fly high in space and beyond. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Mumbai.
Now it's time to break down the news shaping our world. Ticks that spread disease are spreading across the country, moving north and west fast. But first, how some taxpayers feel as Canada commits to defense spending not seen since wartime.
5% of our GDP would be about $150 billion.
I mean, that's a lot. You have to be prepared for the worst.
It could go to other things like education.
Plus, Canada's top soldier on this pivotal moment.
The world is a dangerous place at the moment.
How fast can new money have an impact?
It takes years before you can reacquire those capabilities.
So let's start with some of the people footing that big bill. Trishla Parekh asked them to open our national envelope and answer the question inside.
How do you feel about more of your taxes, oh God, being spent on defense? I'm pretty against it personally. I don't know about these guys.
Yep, I feel okay with this.
5%'s rather high.
It's the biggest increase in spending on defense since World War II, I believe. So it's a pretty significant moment.
Hi, we're from CBC The National, and we are asking people on the street a question in this envelope. Would you be willing to answer?
Sure.
Okay.
How do you feel about more of your taxes being spent on defense? I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know how I feel about any of the stuff that's going on.
I think actually in the world we're in, we don't really have a choice. And I don't think we can just count on the U.S. always being there to bail us out.
As much as I believe in peace, we had to safeguard, especially our Arctic area. It's good to have a presence so that way we can not get people like Russia to interfere with foreign matters.
No, don't want it. If anything, we need to cut back and invest more in infrastructure.
We should be ramping up our spending on things that matter more, like health services, mental health services, housing.
I think everybody always wants their piece of the pie, but we do need to allocate money where it should do the best to the world. Luckily, I'm not making very much, so I'm not much of my taxes are going towards it, but I think some people will certainly be upset.
You only have a finite amount. You don't have an infinite amount of dollars that can be spent. We need to have peace in the world, and then you don't need such a big defense budget.
I'd rather money be spent on other things.
We're one bad thing away from wishing that we had spent this money.
More things that will benefit people instead of defending wars.
You can hope that someone will protect you, but at the end of the day, you need to make sure that you can protect yourself.
Okay, a few perspectives from you there. Now it's time to hear from the woman who leads Canada's armed forces. General Jennie Carignan's first year on the job saw foreign wars and diplomatic upheavals. And now, as you've heard in the news, Canada has committed to meet NATO's demand to spend 5% of GDP on defense by 2035. 3.5% for core military spending, the rest for defense infrastructure. General Carignan sat down with Susan Ormiston, guest host of CBC Radio's The Current, to answer questions on where those new billions are needed.
General Carignan, welcome.
Hello, Susan. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. General, I want to talk about NATO. You've had a lot of experience with NATO missions in Iraq, I believe, in Afghanistan and others. Canada has just, some say belatedly, agreed to a 2% of GDP target. Now it's 3.5 or more. Is that possible? Can we meet it?
What we see as we engage with Canadians at the moment is a realization that our geography does not protect us as well as it used to be. The advancement of technologies, mostly in the missile domain, we know it can reach our continent and our big urban areas at the moment. And so it is clear that the environment has changed, so we'll need to invest in our own defense, in sovereign capabilities to be able to assume our own sovereignty, especially in the Arctic, as it changes with climate and it becomes more accessible over time.
I'm going to get to that Arctic in a moment, but getting back to the fundamental changes, as you say, there was a senior lieutenant general in Latvia recently told our defense correspondent at CBC that the army we have now is not the army we need for the future. That's a pretty bold statement, and even the Prime Minister has talked about, you know, you need more recruits, you need to keep them, you have 1 in 4 seaworthy submarines, you're looking at F-35s that are delayed and expensive. It sounds as if we are not capable currently of fulfilling our NATO obligations.
So there is more work to do, that is for sure, and all of our allies are in similar positions. So with the behavior of Russia, with the behavior again of adversaries across the world, it is clear that we need different capabilities and go back to collective defense and then national defense within our own borders as well. So that requires different capabilities, and I'm just going to take one as a very good example. It's air defense capabilities. In a scenario like Afghanistan, you don't need air defense because you have air supremacy. So we divested those systems to get other capabilities that were required for that specific type of theater of operation. But the type of conflict that we see happening right now, Russia, again, China, it's large-scale conventional conflicts and requires fundamentally different equipment structures to sustain the requirements of defense as well.
But how far behind are we? I mean, we left Afghanistan 15 years ago, and we've had wars ever since. We don't have operational drones. We won't have until perhaps the early to mid-2030s. What is a priority for the defense spending that has been promised by the government for the armed forces?
So we are acquiring air defense system as we speak, for example. So short, medium, long range. So we're in the process of doing that. Long-range precision fires is another one.
You mentioned air defense systems as something we need to invest in soon. What else are we missing in the event of the scale of threats that Canada is facing right now, both in the Arctic and our allegiances and operations overseas?
So one of our main area of focus is Canada and the Arctic, the defense of Canada and the Arctic. And this is part of our defense policy. So this is definitely an area where we need to invest more.
But what is the scale of the geopolitical threat in your view?
Well, the scale, from a military perspective, it's mostly ballistic missile, cruise missile, and hypersonic missile as well, that are very, very difficult to defeat. You've only got sometimes a few minutes to react. So again, from a military perspective, coming from the West, it is more about those new technologies along with the way they can be delivered via ships, submarines, space, or other means.
I'm curious how long you think we need as a country to be ready, to be military prepared in the Arctic to face those threats.
I think if there is one thing about the military to be ready is that it needs to be a sustained and stable preparation because if we demobilize, it takes years before you can reacquire those capabilities and then get people ready and trained to use the systems appropriately.
General, do you get a sense that the Canadian government and Canadians in general are ready to give you that sustained investment? It sounds like we need a lot more in order to be ready. We have some catching up to do. Is the will there?
My sense is that we are getting a lot of support from Canadians. It is a realization that, you know, the world is a dangerous place at the moment. It's very volatile. There are many things that we don't control, but one thing that we do control is how we get ready and prepared.
I want to ask you about one of the assets that you mentioned, the fighter jets. We have a decision to make about the F-35 program. Do you think that we should continue to invest in the U.S. F-35s beyond the 16 that we've already paid for to a maximum of 88? Is that something that you would recommend the government do?
So I think for the moment, we'll have to see what the results of the reviews are.
But you are the head of the armed forces. You must have an opinion, a trained opinion about whether or not we should stay with one type of F-35 that we've already expressed interest in, or whether two different types of jet fighters would be doable.
Well, I'm always ready to revisit what we've decided, and I'm always ready to see what the analysis is going to give me, and then, you know, then what we propose to the government, and then it will be up to them to make the decision.
And you haven't got to that proposal yet? You're not willing to say what you're telling the government we should do?
I want to see the analysis first.
Because the cost is ballooning, as the Auditor General's report made
well,
clear.
It is, and again, this is something we don't control. Change in currency, inflation, these always play in those projects that are very long-term. So again, this is a consideration as part of the decision-making process.
It's a difficult time for Ukraine. NATO may spend less time talking about Ukraine than it has in the past, in part perhaps to placate the US president. What should come out of the NATO meeting in terms of defending Ukraine?
So what is clear is that support to Ukraine is continuous, and we are looking at various means of enabling their fight. So for example, as part of our investments in defense, there is a $2 billion there that has been allocated for the support to Ukraine. So that support definitely continues. Although it is not necessarily out in the media because there's a lot going on in the world, but that support definitely is ongoing.
Tehran, of course, launched missiles at the U.S. base in Qatar this week. You have armed forces members in the Middle East broadly, some with UN, some with NATO missions. Are you adding any security measures to protect Canadians there?
So, in terms of armed forces members, of course, we are always monitoring where they are and ensuring that the appropriate force protection measures are in place, that they have shelters and that they have the necessary situational awareness to make the right decisions. So this is in terms of armed forces members, but also we are working very closely with Global Affairs Canada to monitor the situation in each one of these countries in case we need to evacuate Canadians from these countries.
General, not only are you the first female head of the Canadian Armed Forces, I think it's undoubtable that you are the first avid dancer at the head of the armed forces. Flamenco, I believe, and ballroom dancing. So my question is, does your fancy footwork experience help you get around the enormous challenges you face?
Well, for me, it's a hobby. It's an opportunity to be with a group of wonderful people and have great social experience as well at the same time. But it's an activity that I have always enjoyed since I was a child. So to me, it's an opportunity to meet people and do something I like.
A little stress reliever, I imagine.
For sure, yes.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Susan.
Susan's full interview with General Carignan is available on the CBC Listen app and online at CBC Radio's The Current. Well, ticks are spreading in parts of Canada, posing a risk for humans and pets.
Here's where to be on the lookout and what you need to know depending on where you live.
Johanna Wagstaff on how to respond if you get bit. longer, hotter summer means make way for the ticks.
One well-fed female can lay up to 3,000 eggs.
They spread disease, and the level of risk depends on where you live.
70–80%. It's kind of appalling.
So what can you do?
You are about to find out. Johanna Wagstaff breaks down which parts of the country have a lower risk of infection, and she has tips anyone can use to try to keep from getting sick.
Not all ticks come with the same problems. Here's where to be on the lookout and what you need to know depending on where you live. So ticks used to hang out mainly in southern Ontario, but they're expanding their range, especially the black-legged lime-carrying variety. Now, they're in almost every southern province. Thanks to climate change, these 8-legged arachnids, yes, they're cousins of spiders, are moving north and west fast, around 50 kilometers per year. Warmer winters mean more ticks survive the cold. Ideally, it stays above 4 degrees for them. So longer springs and falls give them extra time to feed and breed. One well-fed female can lay up to 3,000 eggs. Plus, their hitchhiking hosts, deer, mice, birds, they're moving north too. This year, Eastern Canada had a mild winter and a damp spring, basically perfect tick weather. In places like New Brunswick, researchers are finding huge numbers of ticks.
Depending where you are, the percentage of ticks that are infected, as you go further north, it can be as low as 15%. When you're the south, southern Ontario, southern Nova Scotia, middle of Nova Scotia, 70–80%. It's kind of appalling.
Okay, but here's the part that really gets me. They're basically crawling bags of pathogens. Lyme is the big one, but they can also spread other viruses too, sometimes multiple infections from just one bite. If you're in BC though, the picture is a little different. Ticks are on the rise, but Lyme rates have stayed low. Less than 1% of ticks tested carry that bacteria. That's partly thanks to different species, different hosts, and different vegetation here. It's a similar story across the southern prairies. Most ticks don't carry the virus, but numbers are climbing. So Canada doesn't track ticks nationally in real time, but apps like eTick show a clear spike in reports this year. It's not perfect data, but it's telling. People are noticing and uploading a lot. So what can you do? Stick to trails, wear long socks, check for ticks after you've been outside, especially on kids and dogs. And if you find a tick on you, basically a freckle with legs, don't panic. The tick usually needs to be attached for over 24 hours to transmit the disease. Use tweezers, grab the tick as close to your skin as possible and pull straight out. Clean the bite area, keep an eye on the bite site for rash or flu-like symptoms, and see a doctor if anything feels off. I leave you with very good news. One day soon, we hope to have a vaccine. Scientists are working on it. Until then, enjoy the outdoors, just be tick smart.
Okay, in the war against ticks, a new weapon may indeed be emerging. So researchers at Acadia University in Nova Scotia discovered that a soil fungus harmless to humans is lethal to black-legged ticks. So they are now using nanotechnology to isolate the natural insecticide. Up next, lightning strikes a grade 8 graduation.
Everybody kind of was like, ooh. And then like a minute later, there was another huge bang.
How they salvaged the ceremony after the shocking disruption. You're looking at the exact second lightning struck London's South Collegiate in Ontario, creating a major disruption, very rude one, during a grade 8 grad ceremony. So soon after that, hundreds of people had to evacuate, putting the event at risk. But tonight, the electric interruption and how everyone rallied makes our moment.
It was my daughter's grade 8 graduation at the high school, and we had just started the ceremony. We heard a crack of thunder, and everybody kind of was like, ooh. And then like a minute later, there was another huge bang. Everybody was like kind of visibly reacted. And then the next thing we knew, like 30 seconds later, the fire alarm started going off. There was actually no fire. The lightning had struck the building and it had struck the chimney, and part of the chimney was now in the basement of the school. As a parent, you're hoping, okay, are they still going to be able to do the party for the kids? Our superintendent found another high school nearby to us. Everybody just kind of like grabbed decorations and drove over to the next school and set it up as quickly as they could. Everyone was really calm the whole time. Even the kids, we just like almost laughed about it. It made for a long night, but it was a great night.
Okay, that's crazy. Love it when people find sort of the silver lining. Here's another one. That school didn't have air conditioning, so it was pretty hot. But after lightning struck and they had to move to another one, that one did. So it ended well for everyone, really. From all of us at The National, thank you for being with us. You can watch anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app and subscribe to The National's YouTube channel. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Take care.